You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to The Ranch, everybody, the podcast that explores the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch, Eagle, and the greater Boise area. This is the first of 4 interviews interviewing the people that are running for city council in the city of Eagle. I did offer an interview several times to Mary May, but she did decline. Now, the ground rules. No candidate knew what the other candidate said with regard to any particular questions. They also didn't know what I was going to ask, so I had to wait until all of the interviews were done before I published the first interview. I'm going to release these all this week, so the first one should be Monday morning, the next one should be Tuesday afternoon, the next one should be Thursday morning, the last one should be Friday evening. This way we can get them all out in 1 week, and then the following week I can start publishing the interviews with the people that are running for Board of Education for West Ada Unified. I also have some awesome additional guests coming in that aren't running for any elected position, and I'm not going to know who they are, but they are going to be fantastic interviews. So stay tuned for that. My guest today is, of course, running for city council in the city of Eagle. He did run for mayor in 2019. He's heavily invested in the community. He goes to tons of the city meetings and really just participates on a lot of levels in this area. He's a great guy to talk to. But without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Christopher Hadden. Chris, thank you for coming. Or is it Christopher? My apologies. Which is it?
Either or.
Either or, baby. Here we are. We're here tonight. Thank you for coming. I know it's the end of a work day. I really appreciate you taking the time.
You bet.
Hot things happening, right? So it's Thursday right now. What is it, the 28th? Thursday the 28th.
Yes.
There was the town or city council meeting, right?
Yes.
On Tuesday. That got really heated. Like, it was almost the kind of thing where you expect it to be on TikTok. Like, you see the people up there arguing. You're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness that's not my town. But like, it is.
It is our town.
It is. Our town. What did you think of that? Because you are running for city council, right?
Correct.
And so you will be one of the people up there voting, right? And of course, the mayor, whoever the mayor ends up being, will be the person who makes recommendations. But you will be one of the people, engaging in presumably heated discussion or very, impassioned discussion and going back and forth. What did you think about what happened on Tuesday?
Well, there was so much lead up to that. And I think what everyone saw play out was just an implosion at that point. There was a lot of unprofessional conduct, in my opinion, that occurred leading up to it. And that was just the end all. Approximately a week and a half ago, probably almost 2 weeks ago, I got the letter that was classified, or I shouldn't say classified, but the council said was leaked. And it is a public document. It is it's not a confidential document. In fact, I submitted through a FOIA request requesting all the documentation with regards to the public safety, with regards to the ACSO contract. And that was not one of the documents that was held back. There was only 2 documents out of, I want to say, probably 10 or more. And I can always give you the FOIA request number to show it. But that letter was, I think, very professionally written and heartfelt from Chief Wilkie, and expressing the current situation within the Eagle Police Department. And clearly, people didn't want that information outside of city council. And that's where everything kind of just went crazy. And from there, there was apparently the 3 other council members, they met on a Saturday, didn't publicly notice it, wrote a letter in response to it, and they proceeded to attack a mayoral candidate.
Okay, hang on, back up. So about 2 weeks ago,
yeah.
The letter, I think, that you're talking about the Chief Wilkie letter, the 18 days and counting. Okay.
That's correct, yes.
So, to be clear, this letter wasn't leaked. There was nothing nefarious about the acquisition of this document. You just filed a form saying, essentially, is it a Freedom of Information Act?
I filed it after a Freedom of Information Act request after the fact, and that was included in, because I was asking for that letter. And they can hold back any documents that are considered part of the legal discussion.
Okay, so when you say the county the county and city could have been like, hey, listen, we're in the middle of discussions. Mm-hmm. I can't give you this information because we have, numbers up here or whatever, something that could be used to manipulate a negotiation.
Correct.
So They did hold back documents, so that system is in place and functioning. They did not elect to hold back this document. So they freely and under normal due process provided you with this document and said, okay, this is fine for you.
Correct. And
Okay.
I will confirm publicly that I did not receive that document from anyone within the ACSO department, nor a city council member. Okay, so I did not get that from any of them. I got it through my channels, and I publicized it because I thought it was true. It's actually, very heartfelt, like I said, very professional, and it spelled out what was currently going on with regards to the city.
And for people who haven't read the letter, what did the letter say?
Pretty much
Just
what
paraphrase.
pretty much what the current that some of the staff was feeling pressure or stress. Some of them were leaving. Sheriffs were leaving via retiring or asked for transfers because of the uncertainty of this contract. And you can see the sheriff in an interview back in July, and this has been going on for some time because the mayor has been very public about potentially trying to privatize Eagle PD and also questioning Title 31 and how whether we're paying double tax and so forth for Eagle. And so I think those were his primary concerns with holding this up and trying to negotiate. But it's not when you hear the chief.
When you say his primary concerns, not Chief Wilkie, you're talking about the Mayor Pierce?
Yeah, Mayor
Okay.
Pierce. Okay. Yeah. And so
This podcast is brought to you by mtustudios.com. If you are looking to start a podcast or make content for any level of your business, MTU Studios can help. Just reach out to us today and we can start shooting tomorrow.
when you hear the sheriff summarize how the contract works, they are not in a for-profit business. These are operational costs that are passed through. And so I sat through the meeting, I think it was July the 8th, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, June 8th, where Chief Wilkie and Sheriff Clifford, as well as other agencies. So this wasn't the only one that came through, sat there and said we had all these cost of living increases, increases in, equipment, cars, this, that, and the other thing. There was a number of presentations on this particular date, and they were all asking for the city for more money. Obviously, the ACSO was asking for the most, and that was the $503,000 dispute that has been carried on and was that happened to play out on that TV. Since that time as well, the 80 county commissioners weighed in on it, confirming exactly what Sheriff Clifford was saying with how things work with regards to ACSO and their services. And again, that they're pass-through charges. They're not making any money on it. And so it's not like a charge you're going to be able to negotiate or get away from. And so I don't necessarily agree with this being held up for as long as it has. I don't. There's been follow-up discussions where some of the council members saying that this has never been. It changes when it's actually signed or agreed to, whether it be July, August, or September. And but the contract, ended or ends on the 29th, which is a few days away. But now it's just signed this past Tuesday. So the main goal is to address public safety to get the additional staff. And so we're sitting here now, as of Tuesday. We saw the whole thing play out, as dramatic as it was. But
I interrupted you, by the way,
Sure.
to ask you about the letter. You were saying that you're talking about lead up. So you were saying that some of the city council members had met and published like a letter, collaborated on a letter or something.
yes, and that was in
And
my.
I don't know if that's actually accurate. Did they publish? Okay, you
Yeah,
just tell me.
they did publish it, and it's been collaborated or confirmed that it via Helen Russell as well as Melissa that they did write this letter over a weekend, and it was posted to a non-City of Eagle website, and Charlie Bond also confirmed it as well, and the three of them pretty much went after Brad Pike, who's running for mayor. I think it was completely unwarranted, unprofessional, in every which way, every which way possible. I think they violated several different laws, and I think according to the meeting on Tuesday, Brad Pike has had. It sounds like he's referred it to the Attorney General for him to review, because it is threatening and intimidating. And I know Brad Pike has also received, as well as other mayoral candidates. They were told not. You shouldn't be running. You're splitting the vote. because they're whomever this person that has contacted them is in support of Jason Pierce, and I don't agree with that. Anybody has the right to run for office. Everyone has, and no one should sit there and tell them that otherwise. In any case, we're seeing this play out in front of our eyes, and we saw what happened this past Tuesday and how unprofessional that was. But at the end of the day, the main thing is that we get the public safety addressed. So did we on Tuesday?
Right. So
we got the contract signed.
Right. I woke up to a KTV article saying that they had agreed to the $506,000 and then an additional sum in the range of $300,000 to cover two more deputies. Now, somebody told me, they're like, that's not two more deputies working at any given time, right? So there are two deputies essentially roaming around Eagle, addressing various things. It's not like we're going to go to 4 all of a sudden. It just means we're going from 25 deputies to 27 deputies to draw on. So you'll have a little bit more overlap. You'll have a little bit less overtime.
And we still have 3 admins on top of that. So we're not 27. We technically have 30, but they're not sworn deputies, the other 3. But at the end of the day, we're par for the course. So we didn't actually improve anything. We're still at 0.74 deputies per 1,000 residents.
Oh, because we added an Avamore.
Oh,
so this is just 2 is not actually improving anything. It's just not sliding backwards with the addition of population.
Exactly. So I still fully support, come January, if I'm elected, getting 3 more additional deputies immediately, and doing an extensive comprehensive plan review so that forward-looking, because what a lot of people don't understand is that comprehensive plan review incorporates the calculation for collecting those impact fees to pay for the ACSO. Okay, so if we do a comprehensive plan review with the citizens of Eagle, and they're all in support of increasing to that ratio that is recommended by the sheriff of 1 deputy per 1,000, we can work on that in 2024, because it's going to take time for him to ramp up. It's not like that he can bring on that many more deputies. He needs to get them through the academy. He needs to get them equipped. He needs to purchase cars and all those things. And for us to get to 1 deputy per 1,000, you're looking at a total of an additional 9 to 10 officers. Okay, so if we do that in 2024, that would be a goal for 2024. But again, through the comprehensive review, with collaborating with the citizens of Eagle, and if they're in support of that. And so I would be looking at reaching out to the community and even potentially running a survey. The city does surveys all the time. They like to pretend they don't and that they can't do it for Avamore or anything else. But they have a tool called SurveyMonkey, which kicks out these surveys. And the city has a huge database of email addresses that they can survey anybody they want. In this way, because some of these meetings are during the day, people aren't going to take off work 3 o'clock on a Thursday to come to a city hall meeting to sit there for a comprehensive plan review. They're just not going to. So the city needs to be more creative. We have the technology out there nowadays to reach out proactively to the citizens to get this input. And you can see through the Avamore annexation how the city's kind of turned a deaf ear to that. They could have, because they did a survey for the shooting range. They did a survey for the sports complex, and I believe they did 1 or 2 more, and they used that tool, SurveyMonkey. And then an outside group, they ran their own survey, and the group's name is
I think that was SOS Eagle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they got 1,500 respondents to the Avamore, but the city didn't want to accept it.
Okay, now again, you've been following this obviously more closely than I think a lot of people.
Yes.
I talked to both Stan and, I talked to all 3 of the mayoral candidates. Captain Mark did not want to come on, which is totally fine. But with the Avamore annexation, Mayor Pierce, who again didn't get a vote. So obviously I'm like, well, what did you think of this? And he's like, well, I made a recommendation and, they made the call. So, okay, fine. But with Stan and, Brad, I was also able to ask, like, look, did you support this? Brad, of course, was a lone dissenting voice. I asked them, look, there's this idea that there was this, like, a public sentiment that was for Avamore that the public just didn't at large know about. right? So you had, Stan pointed out that he had about 300 people, or there were roughly 300 people that came in the open discussion to talk about Avamore. And then of those people, he said he kept a tally. It was like 92 or 95% were not in favor of Avamore.
Yeah.
And he brought up the Survey Monkey that he had done. He said about 1,500 responses, and people overwhelmingly didn't want Avamore. Do you think, and again, I know we're bouncing around a lot of things already, but do you think Avamore was a right decision now? And if you do, why? And if you don't, very specifically, why?
Well, let me go on the record and sit there and say I'm not anti-Avamore in any way, shape, or form. My wife and I, when we first moved out here, looked at potentially moving up there because it's very similar to where we lived in Arizona. We lived in a community called Ahwatukee. We had a little house on a preserve. There was no one behind us. We had coyotes and you name it, rattlesnakes and all that good stuff behind us, and saguaro cactuses and so forth. As far as it being the right time, no. Right size, no. I think it's too large. And with regards to the public sentiment, if you looked at all the written testimony, as well as what was all the public that had come to testify in person, that number, someone had quantified it in the audience through the two meetings, and he actually presented on it, and it was like 93, 94%. That's not including the survey that Ridgway ran, or the SOS group. I don't know if Ridgway ran it himself or not, but between those two, that was a lot of feedback.
Data.
That's a lot of data. The way public hearings work is that the city council can only take in or review information in that public hearing. So they get a stack of paper from the city staff. That's all their legal documents that they need to review. They usually get it like on a Thursday, Friday before their meeting on Tuesday. They go through that. And then all they can do in the public hearing that's noticed is take into consideration all the public testimony and everything that's presented in that meeting. Nothing from outside. So for me to hear the city council members, the mayor specifically, as well as one of the council members, Charlie Bond, saying we have to take in account 33,000 people's consideration. Well, 33,000 people didn't show up. So where's your survey? Where's your information? What are you getting from them to confirm that you're actually making a decision on their behalf? And only about 17 or 20,000 of them are actually registered voters. So they, could be children, could be this, could be that,
sure,
you name it. So where's that data? It doesn't exist. To me, that's just an excuse to not listen to the people because obviously they were pro Avamore annexation.
You're saying if there was data that the public, that they had like metadata essentially on Eagle, they would have had to essentially disclose that and review that in that public hearing.
Correct.
They would have been like, all right, listen, I hear all of you, roughly 270 of you saying you don't like this, but like I have the results here from the broader population, and the broader population is not you, right?
Correct.
They're not siding with you.
Correct.
And that data was not presented.
Correct. And so back to the surveys or shooting survey, they have the means to do it. They did it for the shooting park. They did it for other parks. And so all they need to do is make that a requirement of the city staff that this is part of the process now, that we're going to, survey the citizens and get, meaningful data. And I think the SOS group that did the survey got the most survey responses out of any survey that was ran for Avamore, because they thought they were going to listen. And ironically, as I testified a week ago Monday, and this was 4 years ago, I got a ordinance changed. I believe it was ordinance number 970. And in that ordinance, it is to publicly notify all the residents of the city of Eagle for any annexation greater than 500 acres. Does that sound simple enough?
Quite simple.
I'm setting you up.
Okay. Okay, God. Here I am. I'm not going anywhere. Hit me.
Because when I say it's simple enough, is a political PAC, the Builders Association of Southwest Idaho, political PAC, worked with the city of Eagle, and they're trying to overturn the ordinance that got changed in added in 2019 ordinance number 970, and they're sitting there saying it wasn't simple enough. We need to simplify it. And in that meeting 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, Monday, it came up. At one point, someone had said, "Well, it's because of the cost." And so what I want to do is apply this to Avamore. So Avamore is 18,000 acres. The change they want to make is they want to revert it back to only notifying people within a half mile or a mile and a half. Now think of Avamore. Who is within a mile and a half of Avamore within the city of Eagle limits to notify? Spring Valley. So they have to notify one person.
Valnova, actually.
Valnova. I still can't remember.
I botched that at least 5 times with Mayor Pierce.
Yeah. So they're looking to change this law. Now, it hasn't come through the city council yet, and so I was there to testify. But in that hearing, the chairman said, well, where's everybody else? Where's the public? And I sat there and said, well, the city has a perception of not listening to the residents. And I said, to show you how effective that law change was, look at how many people showed up. I think it set a record. And it set a record on the public testimony, or the survey as well, for having the most survey respondents. People were reaching out. And when your city and your city leaders don't listen, why bother coming? That's why there was only 2 people that showed up at that meeting. It was me and this guy named Will to testify a week ago Monday, because no one thinks the city leadership listens.
Now, okay. I asked Brad Pike expressly what he feels the benefit of having Avamore in the city of Eagle is to the residents of Eagle, former residents of Eagle, because now Avamore is obviously part of Eagle.
Yeah.
And he couldn't. He had something. He was like, I'm not gonna say one piece, right? Mm-hmm. And again, Brad was against it, so I wasn't trying to get him to plead, the Avamore case. Mm-hmm. And Mayor Pierce, who again did not have a vote, right? He recommended for it.
Yes.
He said that the benefit of having Avamore, this is what Mayor Pierce said. He said the benefit of having Avamore in the city of Eagle is that we now get to control that development. We get to control the density. We get to control a lot of things that, you could have this hyper dense, not appropriate. I don't know what would make it not appropriate. Super dense apartments or something. I'm not 100% sure. But he was like, listen, you don't want to not have control of something that's on your border. So he's like, we can grab something and have a say in how that thing is built and developed over the next 30 something years. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a good reason to annex in Avamore? And again, we can't hold it against him because he didn't vote. But do you think that's a good reason to annex in Avamore? Or do you have a different reason why you think it would be positive, or no reason at all?
Well, we can unpack this because there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot here. That was 3 specific questions. So take your time, knock them down as you see fit.
The Avamore, the way it was negotiated, I don't see any benefits to the city of Eagle. Okay, they had their plan in place since 2012, or many years ago, before Jason took office, or this council took office. So their plan, their master plan, a lot of that was already done. So what are we really getting out of it? Did we get, thousands of acres of open space that's dedicated to the city of Eagle for the residents of Eagle? What do we really get out of it? Do we get a water agreement? Apparently there is a water agreement, but we don't need the water, according to, that's the whole reason why, or one of the reasons for selling Eagle Water Company. So I don't see there right now being a direct benefit. And had I had the opportunity to work on that contract or to negotiate that, I would have negotiated a lot more. My background and experience, formerly working for Honeywell as a global operations manager, worked on multi-million-dollar contracts around the world, around the globe. And so all that legalese, I can read it inside and out, backwards and forwards, and dive deep into it. And the way I see this whole playing out, which a lot of people don't know the history, is that in 2017 and 18, Avamore actually put an application in, or was working, I shouldn't say put an application, but they were working on putting an application in. So they were working with the city of Eagle and put deposits down. And what had happened is the prior administration was holding them to the Eagle standard. And they were saying that you need to pay for a library, you need to pay for police, you need to pay for this, you need to pay for that. And in May of 2019, which happened to be an election year, they pulled all their deposits. And then Dan Richter of Avamore, the managing partner, goes on record with Boise Dev sitting there saying, It's just a matter of another election cycle before we have a change in heart in the city. So he wanted to, get his way. And the way I look at it is the former mayor and council were trying to get, the city way, the City of Eagle way.
They're trying, as Mayor Pierce says now, the Eagle way.
The Eagle way.
Yeah, sure.
I don't see anything being negotiated. I shouldn't say that because they did reduce the density from 8,700 to 7,700 rooftops.
Okay.
So it was reduced. But I think that it should have been potentially less than that. There's another thing that I heard the mayor say with regards to that there was 5 or 10 acre parcels. I did not see that in the agreement anywhere. Okay, I see their villages and I see their design and their layout, and a lot of it's very similar to R2s, R3s, or R4s. But I maybe there's a half acre lot or 1 acre lots, but I don't see anything that's 5 or 10 acre parcels within the Avamore annexation. I could be wrong, but I didn't see it because there's a lot of documentation to go through.
Yeah.
So that's not when he said that, I was like kind of surprised to hear that. But again, it's cluster housing, and when you look at the footprint, it's roughly 18,000 acres, roughly, or 17,600, whatever it was, and only I think 8,000 or 9,000 of it was buildable because the other 25% or the other 9,000 was over 25% grade, and they can't build on it. And so is that going to be turned over to the city, deeded to the city? If it were, then we would be getting a benefit.
Right. You can do like another bike park, or you can utilize it however you like.
So, and that leads me into something that I am proposing and looking, to do if I get elected into the City of Eagle, is that I think we need an Eagle Foothills Preserve that ties in all the BLM land, all the state land. And, one of the things I would have negotiated with Avamore if I was on the council at the time was that land needs to be dedicated to the city permanently, and then we can put bike trails, hiking trails, horseback riding trails. We can have trails designated to each one because you don't want to really mix.
Yeah, right. Bikers and horses
and things like that.
Stuff. Yeah.
Which also jumps over to the whole thing with regards to the shooting range and where that's going to go along with Spring Valley, because it's Valnova.
Come on now, baby.
Well, I'm thinking of their original brochure because I'm very, very visual. And so I have a visual of their brochure from 2017 saying Spring Valley. It's like 19 pages long. And
sure.
In any case, when you go through it, it actually shows you their plan and layout similar to Avamore. Avamore's had their plan, like I said, out there since 2012 or earlier. And Spring Valley's that was approved back in 2007 or 8. And they have a 30-year development agreement on it. It finally resold in 2019 or 20. And so that's finally starting. They still haven't built a single house yet. But when you look at their original plan, they had land that was going to be dedicated to the City of Eagle. So that 630 acres that is being claimed as a success for this particular administration was already planned for in 2017. It just was never deeded to us at that point.
So they had already agreed. They just hadn't pulled the trigger. And then when they pulled the trigger, they're like, we got the 630.
And so when you look at the Spring Valley, they actually had an equestrian, ring in an area right where the shooting range is being proposed now. So this particular area was changed by this administration to a shooting range. It's right on top of homes. I don't think that's a good place there. I've actually spoke to both the mayor as well as Charlie Bond in one of the open houses about, you can look further down the road where you're planning on putting a firehouse that backs up to BLM land. When you look, it's like a mile down the road, or they could have gone 2 miles down the road and been on the Gem County line, again, backing up to BLM land where you could put a shooting range. But I'm jumping around on you and probably didn't answer all your questions.
You're good.
But where I'm going to go right now.
I think you've answered it. So essentially, the Avamore's, you're not universally against Avamore. It's just, it wasn't the right time. As Brad Pike put it, I think he said it's just, or Stan, it's like, it's not going to pay for itself. It's going to be a financial liability for some time because the revenue from the building and everything just won't support the cost of the services.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about the shooting range, I think that potentially is government overreach as well, because why are we using in double taxation, which, the mayor is claiming about ACSO right now with the police services?
What do you, okay, so explain the double taxation for the shooting
Well,
range.
we pay federal taxes, and Fish and Game and other states provide shooting ranges free of charge for citizens.
Okay.
Rifle, shotgun, and archery. Why are we getting into the shooting range business? They've got $4 million earmarked for this project, where they're going to have card readers for us to pay as we go, where they can track us. When Fish and Game should be providing this for us for free. We have all these spots and BLM land all across the Eagle foothills, all the way up to the Gem County line. Why aren't we, hitting up Fish and Game to build those for free, as they have done in other states? Why are we paying for it?
Okay, so we pay into Fish and Game.
Through our federal taxes.
Through our federal taxes.
Yes.
So we pay into Fish and Game. And so we could just hit up Fish and Game and say, hey,
Exactly.
Fish and Game, we have all of this open BLM land. We would love to have a shooting range or something on your bill, by the way, because we already paid you. So, I'm not going to pay you again for it.
Correct. And we've annexed in so much. So we annexed in BLM land to get to Spring Valley. And now they're trying to annex in another 600 plus acres of BLM land. And then if you look at the whole footprint of Avamore, there's BLM and state land all in there. Why are we putting it where it is on top of homes? And why are we paying for it with taxpayer dollars at a tune of $4 million when we're not even providing, we're squabbling over $500,000 discrepancy with the ACSO.
That is a good point. The shooting range, and I spoke with Mayor Pierce about this, and former Mayor Ridgway, because he was a big fan of. I mean, obviously, it goes back to West Park, right? So, former Mayor Ridgway had purchased a $2 million plot of land over kind of near the high school area, and then this administration did sell that land to a profit, which is great. You go to sell it from the pot of $2 million, and then you sold it or 8.5 or 9 or something like that. So they made money there, and they're like, we're going to do the shooting park and then a larger sports complex, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of moving pieces there, and that sports complex, it's my understanding, is going to cost upwards of between $10 and $15 million all in. But
18.
Okay,
is what they budgeted for it.
So $18 million, and I hadn't really thought about. It's like, well, then why are we arguing over the $300,000 for police officers?
I know.
That's an astute point. I hadn't connected those dots before.
So with regards to West Park, the way that I would have handled this as well is getting a tremendous amount of community support, run a survey, you name it, figure out from a comprehensive plan perspective, community perspective, what's the best, what do we need, what do we want, and so on. What a lot of people don't know is the history is that Duck Alley was, right along Linda Road. And that was, I forget how many fields were there. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4. But that property was sold for development. And the answer to Duck Alley was to be West Park. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like we can build parks right here in Eagle. We may need to take a lesson or two from Meridian. Meridian has Heroes Park, which is on 10 Mile across from Costco. That is a 30-acre park on a main artery, attached to a development, and all those homes there benefit from it. Bear in mind, 30 acres. West Park was going to be 35 acres, and the argument's been made that the Floating Feather can't handle the traffic, that people will be parking along the roads, people will be parking in the neighborhoods, and all sorts. There's so many things you could have done with that 35 acres. You didn't even have to utilize all of it. You could have scaled it down if you wanted to, or split it in half, or sold part of it, or whatever it may be. I know it was originally designed to have a dog park, and then what do you call it? A couple of the baseball fields to make up for the loss of Duck Alley. And some of the arguments that were made and said was, well, it's going to be too noisy. Well, you're right by a high school. How is that a valid argument? And then the other argument, which was made by the city council members as well as the former mayors or the current mayor, is all those people have big backyards, so they don't need to have a dog park. Well, we sold that park, and now we bought a sports complex, land for a sports complex, for $12 million, by the way, with some creative financing that no one can even walk to, let alone bike to. It's not connected anywhere. When you look up the definition of a park and you Google it, it's where people can walk to. It's in close proximity to homes and so forth. I understand the whole sports complex thing, but then again, is that another business venture we're getting into that is government overreach that we shouldn't be doing? I get the idea. I get the concept, because there's places throughout the United States where people travel to for soccer tournaments, for baseball, and you name it. One is in my wife's hometown where she grew up, was in Bettendorf, Iowa, right along the Route 80 corridor. But it's all private. It's all privatized. Okay, I don't know how many acres it is, but it's huge. They have an indoor facility as well with soccer fields. They've got a strip mall. They got a gas station. They got hotels.
Right, and
that's all
intended
private.
to be this huge private, essentially magnet.
Yeah, so I get what they're trying to do up there, but again, it's not a sports complex is different than a park.
Right.
And we need parks. And the other thing I question too is, are we at a deficit with parks according to the comprehensive plan at this point? That's something I think that we need to review, because I think that the ratio is, I think it's 10 acres per 1,000 residents or something like that, whatever the ratio is. And we haven't added any new parks in the last, even though our population has grown. And so I know we were close. And the answer to that deficit was the city council purchasing and getting that property ready to be built out. And it was ready. And then they sold it for a profit. But the city is not in a business to make money. And they will always tell you that when we run parks, we're not looking at them to be net positive. It's a service that we're providing to the residents. We need to have so many. And again, the sports complex is not built. It's not developed. The shooting range is not developed. There's no new developed parks that I'm aware of, other than one that was started behind the Lux Theater down there. But it's only like an acre or 2 acre.
Right.
Footprint.
It's not
going to solve the issue.
Addressing this issue now, Mayor Pierce, when I spoke with him, did say that he felt that there was potential to, provide large tournaments, kind of what you're saying. Like, we're going to make a sports complex that's going to be a magnet. It will draw people to the city. That'll draw people to our restaurants, to our hotels. Sure. It will, and we can, charge for tournaments and stuff. Sure. So it does seem to be kind of what you're saying, which is there's some manner of revenue producing asset or aspect of this sports complex, both in the public sphere, because it will be the city's park, and in the private, because it will draw people in and, hotels and stuff. If there was an option to have a small aspect of a capitalistic venture for the city, like managing or running there's some aspect of professional hosting in a sports complex that also drew people in and benefited the hotels and restaurants and stuff. Do you think that's a trade-off that's appropriate, or do you think that it's kind of like, hey, I know we could get a lot of good things if we started running the city like a revenue-producing machine or something like that, but you don't think it's worth it? What do you think?
Well, it's a delicate balance. The whole thing is we need the tax revenue. Right. And so if we have commercial property, we get more tax revenue from commercial than we do from the private sector. If we own the land, if we own the parks, if we own the baseball fields, we're not getting any tax revenue off of that.
So your idea would be, hey, why don't we find a sports complex developer and get them to develop this, have the private enterprise take the risk and the headache, and then we just collect tax revenue from it?
That's correct. Correct.
Again, another I had not heard that idea. That's a very creative thought.
Yeah. Same with the shooting park. Why are we getting in the shooting park business? Why do we create a law to block anybody else from having an outdoor shooting range? It's not like there's 10 applications for shooting ranges in the city, but we had to pass a law to prevent anybody else from competing with the city. We shouldn't be in that in the first place, when Field and Stream or Fish and Game should be providing that to us for free. But if you had a commercial outfit that was looking to open up an outdoor shooting range, then we get the commercial revenue, the tax revenue. So, well,
then of course the citizens would have to pay to go there too, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So as it is that,
you're gonna have to pay for the city too.
Oh,
that shooting range was not free.
So that's not like a city sponsored one, or not fully sponsored.
No, the city that they're proposing is going to be pay as you go. You got to pay for it. It's not free.
Okay, so it's really no different for the citizens then.
Correct.
Who owns the gun range?
Yeah.
The shooting park, rather.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing too is they're going to be able to track whoever's using the facilities. Kind of like I know the IFF, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, Wayne Hoffman did a segment on the city, but specifically called out the mayor with regards to the fiber optic project, and why are we getting into that venture as well? Is there what could be the commercial revenue off of that if it was not, if the city wasn't running all that conduit and running all that piping? Why do we bring it in house? And they have used, for the most part, ARPA funds to fund it. But my understanding is there isn't one subscriber yet other than the city. So they ran all this, used the ARPA funds to run all this cabling for fiber optic, and it's just connecting all of our parks. And the interesting thing is we haven't built the sports complex yet, and that's 9 miles away from the city hall. So that's a lot of cabling to run all the way up there on ARPA fund money. And ARPA fund money also ties into the senior center, which we can talk about a little bit. But
yeah, the senior center is a rough one. But real fast before we finish on parks, as we're talking about this, we're talking about the professional venture of the sports complex, or at least part of it.
Yes.
Right, because I'm not trying to misrepresent it, but the mayor did say that they would have the potential to rent out these areas. So I have to assume there would be some degree of Parks and Rec employees that either have to we have to increase the number of Parks and Rec employees to deal with this, or something. Right, we'll have to reallocate them.
Yes.
And then you're talking about the shooting range. I have to imagine that run by the city, there's going to be a certain amount of draw on the city employees for that.
Correct.
And again, these are two big things. And then we also have increases in employment for the city in a lot of different ways, right? Like we've essentially doubled in the last 4 years the number of city employees.
Yes.
And some of that, it appears, is efficiencies with reducing the number of outside contractors and just bringing things in-house. And, obviously the city doesn't have to run a profit, so they can run these things at cost, which, for instance, landscaping is the one that's been talked about quite a bit. You don't have to pay a landscaper who's trying to feed, the landscaper's kids. You can just pay, you can hire the people the landscaper's hiring himself and not have the profit margin. What do you make of the increase of city employees in the last several years?
Well, I think as a city council member, we'll have to look at what all these people are doing. Right. That example with regards to landscaping sounds like a good one. Because, you'll see.
Did you say something positive, Chris?
I did.
Did you? Oh my God. Good for you, sir. Good for you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds good to me. Yeah. It's like, okay, great. Like, just get the guys who mow the lawn.
Yeah, it's got a pencil. You got to look at what your costs are and so forth. A lot of these landscaping companies, they're for profit versus nonprofit, and so this city can potentially have a cost savings there. When you look at the fiber optic, there are employees that were added for that, but again, we don't have a single subscriber other than the city. What are they going to be doing long term? So I know I think we jumped from 40 to 80.
Yes.
Or 83.
I believe that's the number.
In the last 4 years, we've also doubled the budget from 30 million to 56 million, while we've only added about 4,000 residents. So how do we double? Where's all this money going? And that's what we need to look at. And, so if I get in office again, I want to do a bottoms-up analysis of this budget. Where is everything going? Do we need to realign things? Obviously we keep on talking about the public safety, how we didn't have the 500,000, but now we're got the 500,000 plus another 300,000 from over here. It's a reallocation of funds everywhere. And what's interesting is I'm jumping around a lot, but going back to West Park, I heard again it said, well, we didn't have the money to develop it. Okay, we don't have the money to develop a 35-acre park, but you just bought a 90-acre park. And we had the money, and there's a lot of creative financing going on over there too. With my business background, I worked in corporate finance, and I'd be combing through all these documents and trying to figure out, because again, we need to make sure that whatever business venture we go into, that we're financially solvent. and that it makes practical sense. It doesn't make sense to privatize the Eagle PD. It's going to cost us more. And Sheriff Clifford explained that crystal clear. The Ada County commissioners explained that crystal clear as well. It'll probably cost us at least 30 to 40% more for us to do that. We do not have the commercial taxes coming in like a city like Garden Valley Garden City, where they have a large commercial sector and they are able to privatize their own police force. We don't have that kind of money coming in. Ours is primarily dependent upon the one-time fees for house permits, for impact fees, and all this sort of stuff. And so we need to find a better balance, bring in and attract some of those commercial businesses. And I can't believe one of them was In-N-Out Burger, and we didn't want to be one of the first ones. That's something you don't pass up because you don't know if they're going to come back again in 2 to 3 or 4 or 5 years. I like the small town feel of Eagle and not having a lot of your typical chain stores, but at the same time, we need to build upon our commercial sector to a certain point. And that's where I think a thorough, comprehensive plan review with the citizens and redefining a lot of these areas. A lot of mixed use is like a mixed bag. Anything can go. Anything can go from a auto shop to a fancy building for an architect to a real estate building to or to Intuit or a movie theater. You don't know what's going to go there because it's mixed use. Or you can put an apartment building there. If we define those areas a little bit more and saying this is our commercial sector, or this is going to be retail, that we plan on retail or the retail with housing above it or whatever it may be, like the downtown quarter, that gives a clearer picture for anybody that's coming in to look, that's looking to open those types of businesses, where they're going to be and what they're going to be able to, to attract.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of those businesses have changed. Now, again, I worked for big corporations. I worked for J.P. Morgan Chase. I worked for Honeywell. I worked for Express Scripts, a pharmaceutical company, and had hundreds. I've hired and fired hundreds of employees. The business models have changed significantly. Even with Honeywell, which is an aerospace defense company, they went, and this was like 15, 20 years ago, they went from owning the buildings to selling it. And it's a one-time capital gain. When you sell it, you get that money. It's not coming in every single month, so you don't have a repeat. It's just that one-time capital gain. But then they're also just leasing the building at that point. And a lot of these buildings, if you go around the United States, including Phoenix, they're empty. So the good thing is the city of Eagle hasn't built out in the way that we have a lot of these commercial buildings that are sitting empty. So
Sure.
I want to attract the right type of business, such as an In-N-Out Burger, which people are going to use, versus an office building that you don't know whether, something like COVID is going to affect it or not, and it's going to sit empty for the next 10 years. You don't want that in your city or any city.
Right.
St. Louis hasn't recovered from 25 years ago, and they got empty buildings all over the place. But I also heard...
and Detroit will never recover.
Yeah,
right? Like you have to have a variety of industry. And this is one thing that I think about. So my meat guy, I got a pig guy. I like doing whole hogs, and I made a custom whole hog oven, and we did one for 4th of July in 22, and it was awesome, right? Like 24-hour cook. And
invite me next time.
I will. And it's a smoker, so it's not one of the Cajun style ovens where it's like a plywood box and you put coals on top. That's just an oven. That's not an actual smoker. And it's not a bury in the ground kind of style, because that's not actually smoking either. It's more steaming, right? So I have an actual pig smoker that, I get very excited about. But you got to find a pig guy, right? So I had to go to Garden City to a pig guy, right? Gem State Meat Packing Company. Shout out. They make their own chorizo, by the way, too. You go into the place, it smells like incredible. Anyway, if you like chorizo spices. Anyway, so I had this like 5-foot frozen solid pig, and I drive a Highlander. I was like, I don't think it's going to fit. So to drive home with the snout literally smashed against the back window. I'm like, whatever, man, no one's perfect. I'll Lysol wipe it. But my point is, as I was going there, you're talking about placing companies appropriately, and I have a great appreciation for that, because to get to my meat guy, I was going through residential areas.
Sure.
Right. Like I'm passing kids on scooters and like cars on jacks, and then like out of nowhere, here's this like 1-story white square building, flat roof with, gem state meat. And again, I'm happy with the service, but I immediately thought like, wow, man, what an odd place to place a meat company. And yeah, they have industry, but it seems that it just kind of sprung up in a variety of places. And Eagle has the opportunity to attract business, but appropriately place it, which is, I think, a really good point that several people have made, which is, look, we want to grow, but we want to grow appropriately.
Yeah. And I saw before moving here, or in the first couple of years of moving here, looking at the comprehensive plan, and it showed a sector right along Beacon Light and Highway 16.
You looked at the comprehensive plan before moving here?
I did.
Bro, I looked at like one school's ratings, and I was like, done. I'm going. The elementary school's good. I'm going.
Well, it's a little different with my family because I do have a daughter with special needs. And so when it's a big thing for us to move. In fact, when we moved here, or when we were looking, I visited all 7 schools that offered, a blended special needs pre-K. And so, and that's, it took us 2 years visiting here and checking things out and checking out the schools. And we narrowed it down to 2 schools. And there was Seven Oaks Elementary in Eagle, or Discovery in Meridian. And then we started looking at houses and what we can put an offer in. We put an offer in on the house in the preserve. It got accepted and sealed our fate.
There you go.
Yeah. And I liked the feel of Eagle a lot more. And at that time, there was a few less apartments at that point in time. And it reminded me of my hometown that I grew up in New Jersey. But so I'm with that, the apartments, that's been an issue that I've heard come up quite a few times too. And what has happened, I'm not a huge supporter, but looking at the comprehensive plan review and looking at not only commercial, I want to look at apartments. Have we met our saturation for apartments at this point? Do we have more areas, or don't we, where we want to place these or not place them? And I've heard a lot of misstatements and accusations of what this council did versus last council and so forth. And unfortunately I heard Mayor Pierce reference that there was 4,000 apartments approved during the last administration. And I've learned and done a lot of research, and there was actually only one apartment complex. A lot of them are carryovers from prior administrations. And so I wanted to correct that on the record. But I do think we're at a point on whomever approved them, whether it was Pierce's administration, Ridgway's, or Reynolds, or even earlier, are we at
Merrill's,
are we at a point that we've hit a certain saturation point that we don't need anymore? Or do we want to ban, trailer parks? A lot of them have been going away anyway, naturally. And, I know there's some are more run down than others, and some of them look great, type of thing. Those are all things that you can do through the comprehensive plan process with the citizenry and make those adjustments. And then that is a guide going forward for the next 4 or 10 years. Or however long it is. And so I would like to touch on all those elements. I will compliment that when I did look at the comprehensive plan from, I think it was the 2017, again, that corridor, when you look at the outskirts of your town is where you kind of want to put those commercial buildings, and so that you can attract business from other cities to come and use your facilities.
Right, and disturb the residents as little as possible.
Correct. Right. And so where I live now, there isn't anything out by us, and I literally have to go across the Boise River and go up to Linder and Shinden. And if I'm on the Eagle side, I'm shopping in the Eagle. If I'm on the other side, I'm shopping in Meridian, where the Winco is. And so, and then the Costco is obviously in Meridian. And that would have been an awesome, because I don't hardly ever see a Costco closing up. And I heard, it's a rumor, I don't know if it's true, that they were looking at potentially Eagle. And I don't know what administration lost that opportunity, but I would have highly encouraged that and fought for that, right, to be an Eagle. And the ideal area for it would have been right down by 16 in State. And
a quick note on the trailer parks. It's my understanding that Eagle is actively not renewing business licenses for the trailer parks. So they're not banning them, but they're not like, it's very analogous to when insurance companies are forced to insure a state. They're like, okay, well, we're not gonna cancel the policies. We're just not gonna renew them or make new ones. Things of that nature. So they are actively trying to essentially put a timer on those parks.
That's great. And there's other things that need to be done too.
And again, I'm accurate in that. Am I not?
I haven't checked up on it, so I don't know.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And again, if I could be off, but it was my understanding that they're essentially like, look, these trailer parks are not really the look that Eagle's going for at this point. Sure. So we're not booting anyone. We're just saying, hey, when your lease is up or when your business license is up, we're not going to renew that. And again, I could be off on that.
And so, jumping back to some of the other growth and so forth, and I keep on bringing up the comprehensive plan review, but we had over 15,000 rooftops approved in the last 4 years, which is, and a record annexation from a landmass size, because it's huge. It's 18,000. It's like another city on top of a city. By the time when you're talking about 15,000 rooftops, that's like 42,000 people. That's not tomorrow. It's going to be over time. It could take 20 years. It could take 30 years. But we needed to do a better job at managing growth. And some of the things that I'm looking to do is that development agreements right now. Excuse me. They have developers get a land credit. And what that means is if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, and it's an R3, or forgive me because I don't remember the zoning codes. I don't have it on the top of my head. But they are able to reduce the size of that from 10,000 to 7,000 and apply that 3,000 square feet to the open space calculation. I don't think that should be. There are cities within the state of Idaho that have a rule or a law in place that says you can't circumvent the planning and zoning laws. Just changing that one law would reduce the density of any development agreement. And essentially, you will then have a true 20% open space. So if you have a 100-acre development, you should expect to see 20 acres as open space, and then the developer gets to use the remaining 80 acres to plug their roads in, their sidewalks, and so forth, and then squeeze their houses in. But if they are specified to have R3, R4s, and R5s, you should see a 10,000 square foot lot or a 7,000 square foot lot or a 6,000 square foot lot. It shouldn't be designated as a R3 with 10,000 square feet, and then you're looking at, well, my house only has 6. Well, that's because they used that land credit towards the open space. And now you have a big house on a tiny lot that has a short driveway, has a 10-foot backyard, and that's and you're circumventing all the zoning setbacks and so forth. That's high density. And when you look at Avamore being annexed into the city of Eagle, they created their own, just like Spring Valley, they have their own set of ordinances. And why is that? If you're conforming with the city of Eagle building codes and so forth, why do you need a whole separate set of ordinances? I understand there may be some differences, but those differences aren't that many. I mean, you are in the grasslands. Yeah, you're in a mountainous region. You may have to have different design aspects with regards to they need to be, fireproof siding and shingle roofs and low water use. But, that could be a chapter that's added or modified based on that region. You don't need a whole separate ordinance. And so, back to your earlier question about what are we gaining, the way that it was brought in, I don't see any benefit.
Gotcha.
With that.
Gotcha.
So
now, the senior center and the landing is a really hot thing. Obviously, former Mayor Ridgway is the president of the senior center, and he's kind of been a champion for seniors. It sounds like there were a lot of things going on, including a very unfortunate death of an elderly gentleman who was not a member of the senior center on a Valley Transit, bus. All kinds of nuances there. A lawsuit that named the senior center as well as the city.
Correct.
There were accusations of essentially just financial trickery, right? Because when the senior center was invited in to apply for some COVID relief funds, they did provide a P&L. They did not provide an asset statement, which was, to my understanding, not requested of them. So they provided a P&L where they're losing money and they're saying, look, we're not doing great here. Received money. And then later the city found out, well, you guys actually had assets, right? They had $100,000 or or thereabouts CD. And they said, yes, we have some assets, but you didn't ask us if we had assets. You asked us about our P&L.
Sure.
Right. So there's this whole big wrangle. So bottom line is the city elects to evict them from the senior center, right? So the Eagle Senior Center organization gets evicted from the building that was supposed to be the senior center for and it has been for the last, 3 decades plus.
Yes.
A lot there. Council President Pike did say that he thought that was a good idea because they were able to move them to a different area, and there's a lawsuit and that was a problem. Former Mayor Stan Ridgway obviously was very upset about this and talked at length about the issue. As a councilman that gets a vote on where the city goes here, what would you have done?
I would have voted no against it. I would have not done what has played out. And here's my reason. If you look at any nonprofit, let's say the Youth Ranch, which is right on Eagle, just further down the road, it's a nonprofit. The only difference is that somebody else owns the building, or maybe they own the building, not the city. But if someone walked in there and they slipped and fell and passed away, and let's say in this example that they didn't renew their business permit. Okay, so then you get a tort claim. Tort claim goes against the Youth Ranch, and the other one goes against the city for $5 million. Okay, are you going to see the city go in, lock the doors, and say you're not financially solvent, and you can't afford to pay that $5 million lawsuit? We're going to change the locks, and we're going to stick a video camera in there, make sure you're not going to steal any of the assets. That's what happened here. This is government overreach. This is and on top of that, if you look at the senior citizens, many of them are veterans, or wives are veterans, or they have children that served in the military, or in the police department, or fire department, or ex-firemen, or women. What the city did there, I don't agree with at all. It was a tort claim against the city. It was a tort claim against the senior center for an unfortunate situation. What I do know and have learned is that during COVID, and a number of businesses received COVID relief, and it was ARPA funds. Okay, this is not the city's money. Again, it's not the city's money. So the city asking the seniors back for $100,000 or $150,000, it's not their money.
Okay,
it's ARPA. It's ARPA money. It's federal money that was given to the city to hand out to distressed businesses. And on top of that, they were asked to come in to, if they needed relief, and to come in to the city council by one of the council members at the time.
Okay, now this is a very important point because when I was speaking with Councilman Pike about this, he was saying that he needed essentially, and I shouldn't quote him because I can't remember exactly what I said, but he was referring to taxpayer dollars. And I made the assumption he was talking about Eagle taxpayers. No. But it would seem appropriate then that he was referencing the federal government's tax dollars that that Eagle received and then was distributing to distressed businesses.
So there's probably, I don't have the list in front of me, 40, 60, maybe 100 max, maybe, that businesses that had received money, this ARPA money for COVID relief, along with the senior center. And in any case, on a profit and loss statement, you do have interest income. I'm a finance guy. Interest income is an indication that they have investments.
It's something.
Okay, so in a lot of business, so again, it's a nonprofit. It's just like the city. The city of Eagle is not looking to make profits on parks and all this other stuff, nor is the ACSO. I hate to say there's a lot of bad excuses out there, but there's a lot of bad excuses, and people just need to dig in and do the research and don't buy everything that they're being told. I read the lawsuit, and it's pretty specific. The locks were changed a week before their lease expired. They stuck a camera in there to monitor them, and as it turns out, in these legal documents,
and you're talking about the lawsuit from the Eagle Senior Center against the city. Because there are two lawsuits. There's one from the gentleman who passed away, very unfortunately, and then there's one where the Eagle Senior Center is suing the city.
Actually, reverse.
Oh, excuse me. Suing the city is suing the Eagle Senior Center to recover
It's complicated because the city's suing for the $150,000 in ARPA money back. Right. But now the city or the senior center, so there's actually two lawsuits. The senior center is also suing the city for violation of the Fourth Amendment, of this, of that, and everything else. Right. And so,
and a quick point on COVID relief funds. So I'm a small business owner. I've always have been. And during COVID, my business, it effectively got destroyed. And I don't mean, it's a little bit, it's like, it's gone. The market's gone. I was an SAT tutor. SATs got suspended over COVID. And then that, with a lot of civil unrest, especially in California, led to the universities like Berkeley or UCLA or wherever, just saying, okay, instead of making these tests optional, we'll just go test blind. So they won't even consider them. So as an SAT tutor, it's like, let me get this right. Yeah. The state university system and the state college system both said they will no longer accept these tests. So it's gone, right? So I feel for the people in hospitality that were struggling, but it's like, listen, it's not like people stopped eating pizza forever, because it's kind of anyway. So the point is, when I was very much against asking or even applying for COVID relief funds initially, just on principle, and as things progressed and things got worse and worse, and I realized, like, listen, man, you may not like this, but you got a wife and kids. Yeah. You should at least do something to try to shore this up. They never asked for, they never said, hey, Matt, do you have like a bank account with any money in it? And, I did, and it was going down. Yeah. And they didn't say, like, do you own your house? Like, do you have home equity that you can draw on? Do you have, because I own my house and I did have home equity. They just asked, look, from a business standpoint, are you getting hammered? I was like, unequivocally, yes. So and again, I don't know all of the nuances here, but it's my understanding that it's kind of like, especially with the COVID relief funds, people were not asking, do you have assets that you're trying to survive on? Correct. They were asking, has your business been affected, business or organization? Yeah.
That's correct. And the whole thing is, you got that list, which is available for, if anybody wants to submit through a FOIA request, they can get a copy of that list and see all the businesses that received money. And the whole thing is, they were all asked for the same thing. Give me your P&L, give me your P&L, or whatever it was. And they complied, and then they were given the money. And so, some time passed, and then all of a sudden this death occurred. And I don't know why the senior center is being targeted, why the city wants that building, because that building, according to the lawsuit, was given or put in the city's name in trust.
This was alleged in the lawsuit filed against the city from the senior center, right?
That is correct. That is correct, and that's going to be heard next November. So I know someone had said on one of your podcasts that the lawsuit was dismissed. That's incorrect. It's not dismissed.
Right, and I really want to make a point on this. Yeah. Councilman Pike did get a hold of me after the podcast had compressed and was uploading. He's like, can you put an asterisk, a disclaimer, because we did not win the lawsuit against the senior center. What we did is it's going to court. Sure. That's what he said. He was like, please put an asterisk in there. I want that corrected. Correct. That was not an intentional,
sure. And my understanding too there is that the judge is also a former CPA or something like that. And so he's like, kind of scolded the city, saying, you may want to relook at this because, your argument is not very sound.
Right. But how many organizations did they go back and say, okay, look, categorically, if anybody brought in a P&L with any kind of interest income, we want that money back?
Sure. So, for example, I'm not to pick on Rembrandt, so I'm going to pick on Rembrandt's. They own several businesses. And so did you look at, did you have any, equity in your house? Do you drive a fancy car? Can you like downgrade from a Range Rover to a Ford Pinto or something, and to keep your business viable?
Yeah. Do you have assets? Do you have any manner of assets?
And so, and the other thing too is I don't know what those assets were.
Shout out Rembrandt's, by the way. Big fan.
Yeah,
their loaded hash is amazing.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's very, very good.
Very reasonable too. The loaded hash is like $12. My wife and I split it. We get 2 extra eggs on the side over easy, a little gluten-free toast, all the coffee we can drink. God bless you, Rembrandt.
So I don't mean to pick on them, but that was just the example that popped in my head. No, they're great. But at the end of the day, with the senior center, I forget where I was going to go with this now.
We were talking about organizations having assets that receive.
Oh, sure.
funds.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The investments that they had, I'm not sure what they are. That wasn't disclosed in any of the documents that I was reading. But just to give you an example, if they invested in a CD or something, they could have a penalty if they pull it out. So if they invest $100,000 and they pull it out before the time period or whatever it's for, if it's 5-year, 10-year, or 20-year, they could have a 40% penalty or 50% penalty. So it's not money that is accessible. It may take would have taken them some time to get, or it may not have matured based on whatever they invested in. So you don't know what it is. Just that on the P&L, I would say interest income that would indicate that they have investments somewhere.
Right. So there are a lot of unknowns with this, right?
Correct.
It's a very sad situation. But the bottom line is you feel that, 1, you would not have been in favor of booting them.
No.
2, suing them to recover the money seems suspicious or not. It doesn't seem normal, right?
Correct.
And 3, you mentioned, you don't know why they want that building. So you feel that the city wants to reclaim that building for some reason.
That building, according to the legal documents, was built on the premise that it was going to be a senior center. And at some point, it morphed into that we're going to have a section for the city of Eagle to have a town hall. So it was like 2/3 senior center, 1/3 the city. And it was underneath the understanding that over time that they would eventually build a city hall and vacate. And so all the donations, everything that's been donated has been donated to, just like the youth ranch, donated to the senior center. And all that stuff was housed in that building. And I don't think if they knew now that they would be in this situation that they would ever have let that deed be put in the city's name. And so my understanding is that the city hall expansion was almost double in price. It was budgeted for $2.1 million. It ended up being $3.5 million plus. And the community room is not as big as they had thought. They're running out of space. They doubled the city staff, where they went from 40 to 80. Where are you going to house all these people? And the whole idea was back then for them to sell the landing was to have everything centrally located at City Hall. But now they run out of space and they want to put Parks and Rec in that building, is what I think. Or do something else with it. Right. And in the meantime, it was a $1 lease. Let's kick them out. Let's kick them to the curb. But then on the hindsight, they're sitting there saying, oh, no, we kept all those services going. I can't validate that. I know that they were trying to keep the Meals on Wheels and in the senior center. The real senior, the original one moved into a church, and they had Meals on Wheels going there. And eventually, through whatever they negotiated with the city, they had to stop providing those to the original one. There's a lot there. I think it's completely handled wrong, and I would have not handled that or supported that in that fashion.
We've talked about a lot of things.
Yes.
Parks, employees, public safety, managing development, apartments, senior center. You have done something in this interview that I don't think anyone else has done. You actually said something positive about Mayor Pierce and what he's done. As a citizen, now I'm not a citizen of Eagle, but I am a citizen of Idaho. Mm-hmm. And I'm a resident. I don't know. Am I a citizen of Idaho or resident of Idaho? It doesn't matter. I'm in West Ada.
Both.
Or excuse me, Ada County, right. Mm-hmm. I'm really worried. After speaking with all 3 of the people running for, again, save Captain Mark, no disrespect. After speaking with the 3 members that are running for mayor that I was able to speak with, I actually came away very optimistic. Mm-hmm. Having spoken with them, I'm like, these are good men. These are good people. They have philosophical differences, but they're good people, right? So whoever gets elected, I think, And again, everybody has their opinion on who they would prefer to see, but I'm like, none of these people are like the devil. That's great. But there's a degree of just nasty that's creeping into the political world, even in this small town, that really, really concerns me. And again, I am not a voting resident of Eagle, so I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But I know how important Eagle is for Idaho. I know how important Eagle is in kind of leading the way in the surrounding areas. And it's not a huge city, but and town, however you want to describe it, but it is an important one. It's a proud one, and it really sets a standard. This is putting you on the spot, but what do you think you could do to bring the residents, as a voting member of the town council, what do you think you could do to bring the residents back to the center, to bring respectful dialogue back to the council, so that we can avoid, or at least try to stave off some of the nasty that's developing?
Well, one is I want to work for them, which is a huge difference. And I don't answer to any developers. I'm not taking any money from any PACs or any special interests. I work for the voter. And I think that concept needs to be instilled across the rest of the city, and brought back. And with doing that, I think not only am I articulating it, they're going to see it through my passion and through my work. I believe in open communication. Why do we have to have all these executive sessions? Why can't we just do it out in the public? Like the contract with the ACSO. Is there really anything that is confidential that needs to be done behind closed doors? When in doubt, it says in the Idaho statute, when in doubt, have an open meeting. By doing that and actually being responsive to the citizenry, you'll see naturally more people get involved and participate more. Now, granted, not everybody's going to agree. And and it's just a matter of, working through, understanding what the laws are. But as long as you get the same information in front of everybody and you're all looking at it, we may all look at it differently, but we're all looking at the same information. A perfect example of that is the Eagle Water Company, and that being sold to a foreign entity. Okay. There's been a lot of information thrown around. I sat through all the Public Utility Commission hearings, and I constantly hear councilmen, one of the councilmen sit there and throw out numbers that it was going to cost us $15 million, $20 million, or even $25 million. I heard the mayor, in fact, say at his kickoff at his treasurer's house, or treasurer's the homeowners association, him say there as well it was going to cost us $20 million or $25 million. Those numbers are also unsubstantiated. Again, I sat through, and I know Charlie Bond had made the comment that he has a 3-inch binder showing all these deficits within Eagle Water Company. I want to see it. I'd like to see it. I'd like to have that laid out in front of me, because when I sat through the Idaho Public Utility Commission meetings with regards to the sale of it, it sold for $10.5 million to Suez, and they had $4 million for improvements. So that's $14.5 million. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the price that we were going to get it for, because we already had an intertie with Eagle Water Company. Suez, or Viola, now is, they also, may have wanted to put electronic meters in and things, other upgrades that we may not have needed with the city of Eagle Water. And so that $4 million doesn't necessarily mean what we were going to pay it. Maybe it would have been $2 million. Also, that asking price is $10.5 million. There was a third party. There was a middleman. His name was Norm Bangle, who got an undisclosed amount. And if you look through the history going all the way back to 2012, he was trying to broker a deal for a piece of this puzzle, and we don't know what he got. And it says that in the legal documents. And so again, if we had all that legal documentation, the same information, if I could see a document from Mayor Pierce or from Charlie Bond that says, $20 million or $25 million, then I'd believe it. But right now it's just hearsay, and they keep on throwing it around over and over and over again, like it was a bad deal. I don't know necessarily it was a bad deal. A interesting thing is a year later, conservative Ted Hill who's a representative for the Republican Party, I forget what the bill number was, got a bill passed to make it illegal for any foreign entity to own any natural resources in Idaho. It was also supported by Josh Tanner and also by Scott Grow. And so what they acted on in 2022 became illegal in 2023.
Wow.
And so what I see now is that they're over-exaggerating the numbers in order to backpedal or to soften the blow that this water on our main aquifer is being pumped out of our city into the Viola system for them to do as they please. They can't sell it outside of the state, but they can redistribute it anywhere within their system. And so Boise has been well known to have brown water. And what they do with that is they blend our clean aquifer fresh water with that to reduce the brownness. So
Wow, that I had no idea.
yeah, I can spend an hour just talking on water.
Yeah, I bet you could. I bet you could. Well, Chris, thank you for coming in tonight. Thank you for talking about all this stuff. Thank you for making a compliment, giving credit where credit's due. I think Eagle's a wonderful place. I think that Eagle residents are incredibly lucky. You know, I get to take advantage of the school districts that are in Eagle. I love every second of it. I do my shopping and everything in Eagle. It's great. It's great. And as a voting member of the town council, if the Eagle residents vote you in, I think it's really important that they know where you stand on these things, and I think you've done a good job. Is there anything else you would like to express?
Well, I'd like to keep it great, and I want to make sure that when we have new developments on the books, that we're looking at the schools, we're looking at our roadways, and that those things are done in conjunction with the development agreements, and we can put conditions of approval in, saying that this road needs to be expanded beforehand, or this, so we're not overburdening the schools, and so we're not overburdening our roads. And that will keep our community great, because developments shouldn't necessarily impact us, but add value to our city one way or another, whether they're bringing additional parks, additional tax revenue, whatever it is. They shouldn't be a direct burden in any way, shape, or form. And the only last thing that I would like to add is that when we were talking about Avamore earlier, I didn't get it. I kind of lost track and wanted to bring about that. I never anticipated to see that a city would actually pave the way for more homes. And so, again, when I was talking about laying out all the facts, Ada County has historically not approved large-scale developments. They've always reduced the size. And when we were going through the Avamore hearings, I actually called Ada County and asked, has Avamore approached you with a new application? And they had not. And what I had indicated earlier is they applied with the city in 2017, pulled out in 2019. This mayor and council went the extraordinary length to pave the way for them to build out. It was originally, the application was for 8,700 homes, but it turns out it was 7,700. And the way they did that was through the Avamore Sage Development Water Agreement. That was in March of 2022. And as it turned out, is Avamore did have water rights, but they only had a water right for 5 years. So they can only build out homes for that 5-year period. And so if they can only crank out 1,000 homes, that was the end of it. But they needed a municipality in order to build out for future use. And so only a municipality or Viola could have applied for that, but now Viola can't, since that law was changed in 2023 by Ted Hill and and so forth. That paved the way for them to get a 37-year development agreement for 7,700 homes. So I still don't see the argument that the mayor and or council, any one of the council members make, was saying that it was going to happen no matter what.
So and again, let me just sum this up if I'm getting it correct.
Sure.
So you're saying that Avamore was stuck with their development because they had water rights to tap into water resources and build houses for about 5 years. So they got up to about 1,000 homes. Mm-hmm. And at the expiration of that water right, of that 5-year time frame, they could no longer build more wells to continue supporting additional development. Because of that, they were stuck. They had all this developable land and this whole big plan, but they couldn't continue building on it. They had to get connected to another source of water or a municipality. So that's, in your mind, the motivating factor for them aggressively applying and continuing to apply to Eagle, because they needed Eagle's utility system essentially to tie in, or at least allow them now as part of Eagle, like, okay, well, we can drill down and tap more water, do whatever we want. And what you're saying is if Eagle hadn't done that, they would have been stuck. So that's a great motivating factor on Avamore's part. And you're saying there's no real benefit for Eagle here, but they just paved the way. As you're saying, they paved the way and allowed them to do this by bringing them in.
Yeah. So just a slight correction. And it says in black and white in the agreement that Avamore only has a 5-year water right, and they can apply for it's an RAFN for future needs. It says it in black and white, and it says only a municipality, City of Eagle, can apply for that. Whether they eventually tie into us or not, the long-term plan is for that system to tie into ours.
Okay.
Long-term, but it doesn't have to be immediate.
Gotcha.
But they needed the city in order to get that future water permit, and that's purposely why it was done in March of 2022. Subsequent to that, in April of 22 is when their application came into the city. So this whole thing was about water. Without water, they couldn't develop.
And so then that begs the question, well, if the City of Eagle is concerned about Avamore being built up too large and too crazy, why didn't they just not accept them? Because they would have been capped in their development. Am I correct?
That's correct. So usually with all developments, just like you were right here in Dry Creek Ranch. Okay, how many wells do you have?
3.
Okay, the development agreement is they had to, with Hunter Homes, is that they had to provide their own water to all these homes and have enough. And so they keep on testing the water and so forth. Same principle over there. And they had, 5-year water right. But they knew that they're not selling homes as fast as they do down here, and they needed a longer agreement. So,
what you're saying is essentially BHH. Let's say BHH has a 5-year water right, but BHH just built up the 3 wells, and so now they have whatever capacity they have. I think it's like 9,000 gallons a minute. So they have that capacity, so they can continue to develop. Avamore was building wells as they were selling homes. The homes didn't sell fast enough. They didn't build enough water pumps. Am I getting this correct? Or
no, they only had a 5-year water right. So
what does that mean? A 5-year water right?
They have to build out within that period.
Okay, so if it's 4 months and 4 years and 10 months, they can tap another well. The second they go over that 60-month threshold, they can't go
within their water right. So, Dry Creek Ranch, this is what I don't know, is how many water rights does Dry Creek Ranch have?
Gotcha.
Do they have 1 or do they have 3? Because if you have 3, that gives you 15 years.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So there are nuances to the water right, but the bottom line is Avamore's water right had expired. They had essentially built as many homes as they could with the capacity of water they had. They needed to tie into Eagle to get water.
Yeah, so the original 800, 900 homes for phase 1 or whatever, the original village, they've got 4 pumps. The water is being piped up by Viola. The pump house is actually right next to the Eagle Middle School, and that's supplying water to those homes. And so my understanding is they weren't able to expand beyond that, or they could have potentially tapped into Viola. I'm not sure. But in any case, in order to build out the new developments, which one is in Boise County, they ran 7 miles of piping. They've got 4 pumps, 2 holding tanks, and that water right specifically was only for 5 years, and that's where the Avamore water agreement comes into play. Mm-hmm. And I know they were shopping for water for quite some time because they were looking at potentially the Payette River. They even, from my understanding, contacted Boise, the Hunter family, asking if they can get water rights here for up there. And so I know they were shopping for water, and so thus the Avamore water agreement came into play. And that's what really paved the way for the 7,700 homes, where it could have been much smaller. It could have been a 1,000 home footprint or a 2,000 home footprint.
Right.
You get the 900 already. They could have had 1,000 more type of thing, and so on.
Understood.
Yeah.
Well, Chris,
as confusing as it can be.
It's confusing. Thank you for coming in, sir. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you for being the first one to give a compliment. I appreciate that. Good luck with the campaign.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by mtustudios.com. If you're looking to start a podcast or make content for any level of your business, MTU Studios can help. Just reach out to us today and we can start shooting tomorrow.